I stared at the bank statement until the numbers blurred together. $1 million. Gone. My hands trembled as I cross-referenced the withdrawal date with the property records I pulled up on my phone. Victor's new house, the luxury estate he bragged about for weeks. My stomach twisted into knots so tight I thought I might be sick right there at my desk. This couldn't be real. Victor mentored me for 10 years. He taught me everything about running this business. We built this company together from absolutely nothing. I trusted him with my life, with my future, with everything I worked so hard for. The withdrawal authorization bore his signature and mine, but I never signed anything like this. My vision narrowed as rage flooded through me, hot and all-consuming. I grabbed my laptop with shaking fingers and pulled up the property listing. There it was in glossy photos. His dream house, marble countertops, infinity pool, guest house, wine cellar. Bought with my company's money. Bought with funds that should have gone toward expansion, employee bonuses, our shared future. The office walls closed in around me. I stormed into Victor's corner office without knocking. He looked up from his computer screen, completely calm, that familiar warm smile spreading across his weathered face like nothing was wrong. "Madeline, what's the matter?" I slammed the bank statement down on his mahogany desk hard enough to make his coffee cup rattle. "What's the matter? You stole $1 million from our company." He glanced at the paper, then back at me, still smiling. That smile that used to make me feel safe now made my skin crawl. "Stole, that's a very harsh word, Madeline. I made an investment." His voice was steady, almost amused, like I was overreacting to something trivial. "An investment, in a house, in your name only." I could barely keep my voice from shaking. He leaned back in his leather chair, fingers laced casually behind his head. "I needed somewhere impressive to entertain our top-tier clients. You're too cautious, Madeline. Always playing it safe, never taking risks. This company needs bold moves to grow." My jaw dropped open. "Bold moves? You forged my signature on company documents." He shrugged like it meant nothing. "I streamlined the approval process. You would have said no and wasted time overthinking it like you always do." The casual cruelty in his tone absolutely gutted me. 2 days later, Victor gathered the entire staff for an impromptu meeting. My chest tightened with dread when I walked into the main conference room and saw images projected on the screen. His new house, every luxurious detail displayed in high definition for everyone to see. Stone facade, sweeping driveway, professionally landscaped gardens. "I wanted to share some exciting news with the team," Victor announced, his voice booming with unmistakable pride. "I just closed on this beautiful property. It'll be absolutely perfect for entertaining clients and hosting company events." Heads turned toward me with questioning looks on familiar faces. I forced my expression to stay neutral, but my cheeks burned with humiliation. He continued, gesturing at the screen. "Some people prefer to play it safe and stick with the old ways of doing things, but I believe in taking calculated risks that move us forward." His eyes met mine directly across the crowded room. The implication was crystal clear to everyone present. I was the cautious one holding us back. Staff members nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed by the expensive photos. Nobody knew the real truth. Nobody knew he stole company funds to buy his personal dream while I stood there, publicly humiliated and completely powerless to speak without causing a scene. The exclusion started so subtly, I almost didn't notice at first. Victor scheduled important client meetings without copying me on the calendar invites. He made significant decisions about accounts I personally managed for years without bothering to consult me. In hallway conversations, staff members casually mentioned new projects I knew absolutely nothing about. "Oh, Victor said he'd handle that directly," became a constant refrain I heard everywhere. My authority eroded day by day, meeting by meeting. During a routine budget meeting, I questioned an unusual expense report. Victor interrupted me mid-sentence. "Madeline, I've already reviewed and approved this. We don't need to micromanage every little detail." Faces around the conference table shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I was being painted as difficult, nitpicky, someone who didn't trust her own team. Later that afternoon, my assistant mentioned Victor told her to route certain important emails directly to him instead of me. "He said it would be more efficient for everyone," she explained apologetically, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, keeping my expression carefully neutral while fury and helplessness warred violently inside me. This was my company too. I built this from the ground up. But Victor was systematically removing me from the picture, piece by careful piece. The quarterly bonuses came in smaller than anyone expected. I called Victor immediately to ask about the significant discrepancy. "Had to reallocate some funds to other priorities," he said casually, like it was no big deal at all. "Business needs shifted." My carefully prepared proposals sat untouched on his desk for weeks without any approval or feedback. Important projects I championed were suddenly placed under review indefinitely with no clear timeline. He'd lean casually against my office doorframe with that increasingly patronizing smile and say, "You're overreacting about this, Madeline. Everything's perfectly fine. You're just stressed and seeing problems where none exist." But everything wasn't fine at all. Client invoices I needed to personally review started going straight to his desk instead of mine. Vendor contracts I typically negotiated were suddenly reassigned to his direct oversight. "Just trying to lighten your workload a bit," he'd say smoothly, like he was doing me some enormous favor, but I saw the clear pattern emerging. Every small betrayal systematically chipped away at my role, my influence, my rightful stake in the company I helped create from nothing. During team meetings, he'd dismiss my suggestions with a casual wave of his hand. "Let's table that idea for now and revisit it later." Translation: your input doesn't matter anymore to anyone here. Late one night alone in my office, I stared blankly at my computer screen without really seeing anything displayed there. Maybe I was overreacting to everything. Maybe I was being too cautious and rigid like Victor kept saying. Maybe his investment in that expensive house would actually benefit the company somehow in ways I couldn't see yet. The poisonous thoughts circled endlessly through my exhausted mind. I questioned every single decision I made recently. Every instinct I trusted throughout my entire career. Victor had decades more business experience than me. He built successful companies before I even entered this industry as a nervous intern. Who was I to question his superior judgment about strategic investments? But then I'd remember that forged signature on the bank documents, that dismissive smirk on his face, the casual way he waved away all my legitimate concerns. My confidence was completely shattered into pieces. I couldn't trust my own perceptions or professional judgment anymore. Was I being paranoid and emotional, or was I the only person seeing clearly through his manipulation? I pulled up old financial statements, comparing them obsessively to current ones, desperately searching for validation of my fears or proof I was completely wrong about everything. The numbers swam mockingly before my tired, burning eyes. Sleep felt impossible most nights now. Victor organized an elaborate company outing to his brand new house for the entire staff. Team building and celebration, he called it enthusiastically in the invitation email. I stood rigidly on his expansive marble patio overlooking the stunning infinity pool, champagne glass clutched far too tightly in my white-knuckled hand. Staff members wandered freely through enormous rooms decorated with expensive contemporary art and designer furniture that cost more than most people's cars. My money funded this obscene display, company money that should have been invested in growth and people, but here I was smiling and pretending everything was perfectly fine and normal. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Victor appeared suddenly beside me, his voice absolutely dripping with smug satisfaction. I managed only a tight, brief nod in response. He gestured expansively at the property stretching before us. "This is what real vision looks like, Madeline, not timidity and endless second-guessing." The insult was barely veiled at all. Around us, employees laughed easily and took countless photos, clearly impressed by his apparent wild success. He gave personal tour of every room, pointing out each luxury feature, every expensive custom detail with obvious pride. I wanted to scream the truth at all of them, to tell everyone this house was built on theft and complete betrayal of trust. Instead, I sipped champagne that tasted like bitter ash. Our most important clients started gravitating noticeably toward Victor and away from me. His calculated charm offensive was clearly working exactly as he planned. He'd take them to expensive lunches without inviting me along, schedule important calls during times I wasn't available in the office, systematically position himself as their primary contact for everything. "Victor really understands our specific needs and challenges," one longtime client mentioned casually during a quarterly review meeting. The words strung sharply. I personally managed that account successfully for 5 full years, but Victor swooped in smoothly with his practiced charisma and expensive gestures, slowly but surely convincing them he was the real power and brains behind our entire company. Another major client mentioned Victor, incredibly impressive new property, and how professional and memorable the private tour had been for their executive team. My jaw clenched painfully. He was brazenly using the stolen house to impress our clients, to build his personal brand at the company's direct expense, and my complete exclusion from relationships I built carefully over years. I finally saw the real danger clearly now. This wasn't just about money or hurt feelings anymore. Victor was systematically positioning himself to take over completely, to push me entirely out of the business I helped create. And if clients believed he was the true leader, what would stop him from forcing me out? At a crucial client presentation I'd prepared for weeks, I was carefully explaining our proposed strategy when Victor suddenly interrupted me mid-sentence. Actually, we're taking a completely different approach than what Madeline just outlined. He proceeded to describe an alternative plan I'd never heard before in my life, directly contradicting everything I'd just presented to confused clients. The clients looked genuinely puzzled, glancing back and forth between us uncertainly. My face burned hot with absolute humiliation in front of people whose respect I'd earned over years. After the awkward meeting finally ended, I cornered Victor in the hallway outside. "You deliberately undermined me in there in front of everyone." My voice shook despite my best efforts to stay calm. He shrugged with infuriating casualness. "Your approach was outdated and too conservative. I had to adapt on the fly to save the presentation." Something deep inside me finally snapped hard. Years of partnership, mutual respect, genuine mentorship, all completely gone and destroyed. I wanted desperately to quit right there, to walk away from this increasingly toxic nightmare he'd created and never look back. The words formed clearly on my tongue, ready to be spoken, but somehow I swallowed them back down. Quitting meant he won everything. Quitting meant he took everything I built and left me with absolutely nothing to show for years of work. Disturbing whispers reached me through a few genuinely concerned staff members who still trusted me. Victor was talking openly about organizational restructuring and new leadership dynamics for our growth phase. He never said my name directly in these conversations, but the unmistakable implications were crystal clear to everyone listening. "The company needs fresh vision and bolder direction," he'd tell people confidentially. "Some partners get too comfortable in their roles, too resistant to necessary change and innovation." I accidentally overheard him on a phone call through his partially open office door one afternoon. "She's honestly holding us back at this point. Brilliant in her time, sure, but times change rapidly. I'm quietly working on a smooth transition plan to move forward." My blood ran ice cold. A transition plan? He wasn't just undermining my current authority and relationships. He was actively planning to remove me entirely and permanently from the company I co-founded with my own hands and mind. Paranoia crept in like poison. Every conversation stopped abruptly when I entered rooms now. Staff members seemed inexplicably nervous around me, like they knew something terrible I didn't. Were they being secretly recruited to his side already? The office felt increasingly hostile, full of hidden threats and secret alliances forming against me. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Victor poisoned the well so thoroughly and completely. I reached out desperately to Sam, a board member I'd known and trusted for years. We met for coffee at a place far from the office. "I need to talk to you confidentially about Victor," I started carefully. Sam immediately shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding direct eye contact. "Madeline, I've actually heard some concerns from Victor too recently, about your management style becoming too rigid and controlling." My stomach dropped sickeningly. He'd already gotten to Sam first, planted seeds of doubt. I tried explaining everything about the house, the forged signature, the systematically stolen funds. Sam frowned deeply. "That's an extremely serious accusation to make. Do you have concrete proof beyond the bank records? Because Victor specifically mentioned he had your clear verbal approval for that withdrawal beforehand. A complete lie, total fabrication. But Sam obviously believed Victor's version without question. I left that meeting feeling more alone and isolated than ever before in my entire career. Other potential allies were similarly hesitant when I reached out. "Victor, been nothing but professional and supportive with me," one said dismissively. "Are you absolutely sure you're not just having a normal business disagreement blown out of proportion?" They'd ask skeptically. Nobody wanted to believe the beloved mentor figure was actually a calculating thief and skilled manipulator. I was completely isolated, totally unsupported, my word against his superior reputation. The crushing despair was almost unbearable. Maybe I should just cut my losses and leave. I completely stopped sleeping through the night. Every single night I lay awake in the darkness, mind racing frantically through endless scenarios, replaying conversations over and over, seeing his smug smirk behind my closed eyelids. The relentless stress manifested in harsh physical symptoms I couldn't ignore. I lost weight rapidly without trying. My hands developed a noticeable tremor I couldn't control. Dark circles under my eyes made my reflection look genuinely haunted and sick. My sister noticed immediately during a rare dinner together. "You look absolutely terrible. What's happening to you?" I tried explaining the situation, but the words came out jumbled, emotional, barely coherent. She looked genuinely worried about my mental state. Maybe you need a real break, some distance and perspective from the whole situation. Distance sounded completely impossible when the company consumed literally every thought, every waking moment. I was drowning in the betrayal, letting it poison absolutely everything good in my life. At home, I snapped irritably at small, meaningless things, couldn't focus on simple conversations with friends or family. My personal life was collapsing steadily under the crushing weight of professional devastation. One morning, I physically couldn't get out of bed at all. The exhaustion was so complete, so overwhelming that just existing felt impossible. This was what Victor's betrayal accomplished. It wasn't just stealing money, it was stealing my confidence, my health, my entire sense of self and worth. At a major client meeting, Victor significantly overplayed his hand for once. He made sweeping promises we absolutely couldn't keep with current resources, guarantees that would dangerously strain our capabilities. The client looked excited and impressed, but I immediately saw the serious risk. After they left, I quietly pulled the proposed contract to review the actual terms. They were significantly worse than Victor described in the meeting. Reckless and potentially disastrous. I mentioned my concerns to our finance director privately. She reviewed the numbers carefully and went visibly pale. This could seriously sink us financially if it goes wrong in any way. For the first time in months, someone else finally saw what I'd been seeing all along. Victor's confidence wasn't visionary leadership. It was dangerous carelessness disguised as boldness. A tiny spark of genuine hope ignited inside me for the first time in weeks. Maybe his unchecked arrogance would ultimately be his own downfall. Maybe I didn't need to actively destroy him myself. Maybe I just needed to let him destroy himself through his own recklessness and be strategically positioned to catch the pieces afterward. The thought gave me the first real energy and purpose I'd felt in what seemed like forever. I started paying much closer attention to his decisions, actively looking for patterns, for exploitable weaknesses, for the inevitable moment when his overconfidence would create a real opportunity I could use. I became a careful, strategic observer of everything Victor did. In meetings, I took detailed notes not just on business matters, but specifically on Victor's revealing behavior patterns. The way he casually interrupted people mid-sentence, the small lies he told clients without hesitation, the unrealistic promises he made without considering actual consequences or resource limitations. His arrogance was literally everywhere once I started actively looking for it. He truly believed deep down he was completely untouchable, that his charm and decades of experience made him invincible to scrutiny. He bragged constantly about deals that hadn't actually closed yet, exaggerated his personal role in past company successes, took credit shamelessly for my work without the slightest hesitation, and critically, he was increasingly careless about details. Important emails weren't thorough or well documented. Records were sloppy and incomplete. He cut corners everywhere because he believed his sterling reputation would carry him smoothly through any potential scrutiny. I noticed he kept absolutely terrible records separating his personal expenses from legitimate company expenses. The house purchase wasn't an isolated incident of poor boundaries. It was a clear pattern. He treated company resources as his personal unlimited bank account, supremely confident nobody would ever question him. Each observation went carefully into a private encrypted file on my personal laptop. No concrete plan yet, just information, just patterns, just growing evidence of a man who believed completely he was above any consequences. Jenna, a sharp junior accountant, appeared nervously at my office door late one afternoon. She looked anxious, glancing down the hallway before entering and closing the door quietly. "Can I talk to you completely confidentially?" My heart rate picked up immediately. She spoke quietly, almost whispering. "I've noticed some significant irregularities in expense reports lately. Victor, specifically. I wanted to flag them through proper channels, but he told me directly not to bother you with minor accounting minutiae that would waste your time." She showed me printed copies she'd made. Personal charges run directly through company accounts. Questionable reimbursements without proper documentation. Nothing individually damning by itself, but together they painted a clear picture of someone who believed rules simply didn't apply to him at all. "What do you want me to do with this information?" Jenna asked seriously. I looked at her careful documentation, her nervous but genuinely determined expression. Finally, a real ally, someone who independently saw what I saw. "Keep recording and documenting everything you find," I said carefully, but very quietly, and show only me. She nodded, clearly understanding the critical need for complete discretion. After she left, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. I wasn't totally alone anymore. Someone validated my instincts. Someone else saw through Victor's polished charm to the corruption underneath. The hope grew genuinely stronger. Maybe this was actually possible. Maybe I could fight back strategically and actually win. I kept my growing file of damaging evidence on an encrypted laptop I took home every single night without fail. One morning, Victor appeared unexpectedly in my office doorway. "What are you working on so intently?" His tone was casual, but his eyes scanned my desk carefully. My laptop was open, displaying a folder prominently titled Financial Review. Not the evidence file itself, but close enough to make my heart pound hard. "Just quarterly projections and analysis," I said, clicking quickly away from the screen. He stepped closer, clearly trying to see better. I angled the laptop away protectively. "Anything I should know about immediately?" The question felt loaded with hidden meaning. Did he suspect something? Had someone told him about my quiet conversations with Jenna? Nothing unusual, just routine analysis like always. We stared at each other for a long, tense moment. His expression was completely unreadable. Finally, he smiled that familiar smile that no longer reassured me at all. "Good. Let me know if you find anything interesting worth discussing." After he left, my hands shook uncontrollably. That was far too close. I needed to be significantly more careful going forward. The risk of premature exposure was very real. If Victor discovered what I was systematically gathering, he'd find a way to discredit it or destroy it entirely. The next week, I noticed him watching me much more carefully than before. My paranoia spiked to new levels. Every casual glance felt suspicious and threatening. I varied my daily routines, checked my office carefully for signs of intrusion, changed all my passwords multiple times. The company hosted a major industry event we'd planned for months. Potential clients, direct competitors, business press, everyone who mattered attended. Victor held court naturally, charming everyone within reach. I circulated professionally, maintaining careful appearances. Then during the keynote panel discussion, it happened publicly. A moderator asked about decision-making philosophy and business partnerships. Victor took the microphone confidently. "Successful partnerships absolutely require one clear, unified vision," he said, looking directly at me across the crowded room. "Too many competing voices create paralysis and stagnation. Someone needs to lead decisively without hesitation." The devastating implication was crushing. I wasn't a real leader. I was an obstacle to progress. People in the audience followed his pointed gaze directly to me. Some looked curious, others sympathetic, all witnessing my public diminishment in real time. He continued smoothly. "I've learned through experience that sometimes you have to make tough calls without waiting endlessly for consensus. Bold action beats cautious deliberation every single time." The room erupted in enthusiastic applause. For him, for his philosophy that directly and publicly criticized mine. My face burned with humiliation. My hands clenched so hard my nails cut painfully into my palms. The rage was absolutely volcanic, barely contained beneath a thin surface. I wanted desperately to stand up and expose him right there, tell everyone about the theft, the manipulation, everything. But I forced myself to remain completely still, to smile politely, to appear unaffected. Inside, I was screaming. That night alone in my home office, something fundamental shifted deep inside me. I stopped seeing Victor's betrayal as something that simply happened to me, and started seeing it as valuable information about him and his weaknesses. His hubris was absolutely massive. He truly believed he was completely untouchable, that his charm and reputation insulated him from any consequences, that arrogance was a weapon I could use against him. He'd made himself highly visible, loud, prominent in industry circles. He'd attached his name and reputation to everything, including that stolen house. The higher his profile, the harder he'd fall when the truth inevitably came out. And it would come out, not through emotional confrontation or public accusations that made me look unstable and vindictive, through facts, evidence, legal consequences he couldn't charm his way out of. I opened my encrypted file and reviewed everything Jenna and I compiled. Expense irregularities, forged signatures, misappropriated funds, poor documentation everywhere. His carelessness was my opportunity. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt something other than rage or despair. I felt hope. Clear, determined, strategic hope. Victor thought he'd already won. He thought I was broken, sidelined, finished. He had absolutely no idea the storm gathering around him. His overconfidence would be his complete destruction, and I would be the one to orchestrate it. I started at the very beginning, pulling every single company record from the past 3 years, bank statements, expense reports, contracts, email threads. Working late after everyone left the office, I built a detailed timeline of Victor's financial decisions. The patterns were absolutely damning. Personal purchases categorized as business expenses, client entertainment that never actually happened, reimbursements without proper receipts or documentation, and the house. The $1 million withdrawal with my forged signature, the most egregious theft in a pattern of smaller violations. I contacted a corporate attorney through a trusted friend's referral, met her at her downtown office, far from anyone who might recognize me. "This is extremely serious," she said after reviewing the initial documents carefully. "If the signature was forged, that's clear fraud. The company has strong grounds to reclaim assets purchased with misappropriated funds." Her confirmation sent adrenaline through my system. I had legal standing. This wasn't just my anger or hurt feelings. This was actionable, criminal even. Every step had to be calculated perfectly. One wrong move, one hint that I was building a case, and Victor might destroy evidence or create false documentation to cover his tracks. The attorney and I developed a strategy. Quiet, thorough, devastating. Jenna became my secret ally, providing documents that proved Victor's pattern of financial impropriety. She noticed the irregularities months ago but didn't know who to tell. "He's so confident," she said during one of our discreet meetings. "He doesn't even try to hide it anymore." We compiled everything methodically: dates, amounts, purposes, proof of personal benefit. I also reached out carefully to 3 staff members I absolutely trusted. Each had noticed problems but stayed silent, unsure if they were seeing things correctly or if speaking up would cost them their jobs. "I thought I was crazy," one admitted quietly. "He's so charming, so convincing, but the numbers didn't add up." Together we built an airtight case. Meanwhile, Victor continued his arrogant display. He bought expensive art for the stolen house and showed photos to clients. He planned elaborate parties on the company's dime, disguising them as business development. He was so certain of his invincibility that he stopped being careful. Every piece of evidence we gathered, he practically handed to us. He remained completely oblivious, strutting through the office like a king, surveying his domain, never suspecting the quiet rebellion happening in spreadsheets and file folders right under his nose. I began planting seeds with key stakeholders, nothing direct, just careful questions. During a board meeting I mentioned, should we review our expense approval process? Some of the numbers seem high lately. Not an accusation, just a concern. One board member frowned. "That's actually a good point. We haven't audited expenses in over a year." Victor dismissed it smoothly. "Madeline worries too much. Our expenses are reasonable for a company our size." But the seed was planted. With clients I was even more subtle. "Victor, been handling most of your account lately. Has the transition been smooth?" The question implied nothing wrong, but it made them think, made them pay attention. I let Victor continue his performance. Every boast about the house, every extravagant gesture, every dismissive comment about my caution, all of it built him higher, made him more visible. The higher he climbed, the more spectacular the fall would be. I just needed patience. The board meeting where everything would unravel was scheduled for 2 weeks away. I had the evidence compiled, the attorney prepared, the supporting witnesses ready. Victor had no idea. He thought he'd already won. That delusion was my greatest advantage. I kept my expression neutral, my actions routine, while the trap closed around him. The board convened in the main conference room. I'd sent documentation to each member 3 days prior through the attorney, ensuring they'd reviewed everything before Victor could spin it. He entered the room confident as ever, smiling at everyone. "Good morning. What's on the agenda today?" The board chair, Margaret, opened a folder. "We need to discuss some financial irregularities that have come to our attention." Victor's smile didn't falter. "Financial irregularities?" "I'm sure there's a simple explanation for any confusion." Margaret looked at him steadily. "$1 million withdrawal for a property purchase in your name, multiple expense reports for personal items, forged authorization signatures." The smile finally cracked. His eyes darted to me. I kept my expression neutral. He started talking fast. "The house was an investment for client entertainment. Madeline knew about it. She approved the concept even if the paperwork got rushed. The signature on the withdrawal authorization is forged," my attorney interrupted, standing to present handwriting analysis. "And the house is titled solely in Victor's name with no company interest documented." Victor stammered. His legendary charm failed spectacularly as he tried to explain, to justify, to redirect blame. But the facts were undeniable. The board members' faces grew colder with each failed explanation. I watched silently. The vote was unanimous. The house, purchased with company funds through fraudulent means, was declared company property. Victor had 48 hours to vacate. I watched his face as the decision was announced. Shock, disbelief, rage, the same emotions he'd caused me now reflected back at him. "You can't do this," he said, voice rising. "I'll fight this, I'll sue." "You can try," my attorney said calmly. "But the evidence is overwhelming. If you pursue legal action, we'll be forced to file criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement." His face went pale. The meeting ended. Victor stormed out, already on his phone, frantically calling lawyers who would tell him the same thing. 2 days later, I drove past his luxury house. A marshal's notice was posted on the front door. Victor stood in the driveway arguing with officials, gesticulating wildly, but there was nothing he could do. The house he'd bought with stolen money, the symbol of his arrogance and betrayal, was being taken from him. The reversal was perfect. Shocking, complete. He used our company as his personal bank account, and now he'd lost everything. I didn't stop, didn't gloat, just kept driving. But the satisfaction was deep and quiet, settling into my bones like warmth after a long cold night. Justice, not revenge. Accountability, not cruelty. The house was gone. His reputation would follow. Victor's reputation crumbled fast. Word spread through industry circles about the fraud and forced asset seizure. Clients quietly moved their business elsewhere, not wanting the association. His phone calls went unreturned. Meetings were cancelled. The charm that carried him for decades meant nothing when the truth came out. He'd leveraged personal relationships to secure loans for other purchases, using the house as collateral. Now those loans were due with no collateral to back them. His financial situation spiraled, but worse than the money was the social death. This was a relationship business. Trust and reputation were everything. Victor had neither anymore. People he mentored distanced themselves. Friends stopped inviting him to events. His name became a cautionary tale about arrogance and greed. I heard through mutual contacts that he tried to blame me, claiming I orchestrated everything out of jealousy. But nobody believed him. The evidence was too clear, his guilt too obvious. His own arrogance had made him sloppy, and that sloppiness destroyed him. I watched from a distance as consequences unfolded, neither celebrating nor sympathizing. He'd stolen from me, humiliated me, tried to erase me from the company I built. Now he faced the natural results of those choices. Justice. I walked through the reclaimed house alone on a quiet Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the marble Victor had been so proud of. The company would sell it, recouping the stolen funds. But for this moment it was simply a space I'd won back through patience and strategy. My reflection stared back from the glass overlooking the infinity pool. I looked different. Older maybe, definitely stronger. This ordeal had nearly broken me, but instead it revealed what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. The company was healing. Clients returned, reassured by the board's decisive action. Staff rallied once they understood the truth. My authority was restored, not given back, but earned through this entire process. I didn't gloat about Victor's downfall. There was no triumph in his destruction, just quiet satisfaction that justice prevailed. He'd betrayed someone who trusted him completely, stolen from the business he claimed to care about, and his own arrogance ensured he'd pay the full price. As I locked the door and walked away, I felt something settle inside me. Closure, not happiness exactly, but peace. The wound would scar, but I'd survived. More than survived, I'd won. Not through rage or impulse, but through patience, strategy, and refusing to let betrayal define me. Victor lost everything. I kept what mattered most.